sun in the sky, you know how I feel.
Good afternoon and bienvenidos, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today for the celebration of Hispanic Executive's first ever visibility issue. My name is Vianney Lubis. I'm the Vice President of Hispanic Executive and the Head of Audience and Engagement, and I'm truly so excited to welcome you to this very special conversation here today. At Hispanic Executive, we bring inspiring and successful Latino leaders across industries together to share their stories, to learn from each other, and connect. And we do this proudly in print, digitally, and through events like these. And let me tell you that the mood is very high here at Hispanic Executive. We've heard such incredible things already since the release of this issue. Our team could not be more proud of this edition, which highlights Latino, LGBTQ+, and immigrant executives who are truly making strides at their organizations and even on a global scale. They're leading authentically, being seen, and paving the way for others like them. And we're just so grateful to them for letting us share their stories and experiences with us and with our readers. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our amazing panelists. So first we have filmmaker Armando Ibañez. Armando is the creator of the award-winning YouTube series Undocumented Tales. He's also involved in collaborations with the Trans Latino Coalition, the Trans Queer Liberation Movement, and more. Next, we have Barry's global CEO, Joey Gonzalez. For those of you who have not taken one of the high intensity classes at Barry's, you're missing out. You've got to do it. Barry's is a global health, wellness, and fitness company that aims to give people the best workouts of their lives. With studios in 14 countries and across the US, Joey started at Barry's as an instructor back in 2004, and he has worked his way up to global CEO. Amazing. We also have Monica Trasandes, the Director of Spanish Language and Latinx Media Representation at GLAAD. Her role includes working closely with media outlets and encouraging them to be more inclusive in their coverage. Really important work. Also joining us today is Carmen, the founder of CC3 Entertainment. Fans might recognize her as a contestant from season 3 of RuPaul's Drag Race, but we all know she has accomplished so much more. Today, she's working really hard to elevate members of the LGBTQ+ community through her agency. And then last but not least, my dear friend, Roman Navarrette, who is this event's moderator and our visibility issue guest editor, also WarnerMedia's marketing director of equity and inclusion. Roman truly provided some incredible feedback and guidance throughout the editorial process of this issue, which truly would not be what it is without him. So before we get started, I do want to take a moment to thank our partners at Visible, the all-digital wireless carrier powered by Verizon. They were the perfect partners for this event because not only are they deeply committed to DEI at the core of their mission and purpose, but they too are shining a bright light on all people and communities so that they're seen, heard, and empowered. This was seen most recently in their Proudly Visible campaign, which you're going to hear just in a moment a little bit more about from none other than their president and CEO, Angie Klein. So honored that you're here with us today, Angie. And with that, I want to welcome you to say a few words.
Is that we're the first all digital wireless carrier in the US. But what that really means is we have no stores, no paper bills, no call centers. Everything is done in our app. And as a result, our pricing is truly accessible with unlimited talk, text, and data for as low as $25 a month. But in practice, we've actually carved out a niche for ourselves as a brand that's worked to elevate marginalized communities and voices since our founding. We've spoken and acted in support of racial and social justice since day one. We've prioritized partnering with diverse voices and causes. And our goal is really to help the invisible become visible. So all are seen, heard, and empowered. We're really a brand that is committed to connecting communities, not only by offering affordable and reliable service, but also through the conversations and dialogue that we can spark online. And this pride, as Vianney mentioned, we launched our hashtag Proudly Visible campaign, in which we worked with partners like the amazing Carmen Carrera, who's here today, musicians Tegan and Sarah, queer environmentalist Patty Gonya, author, performer, and speaker Alok, the first openly gay and first female coach in Super Bowl history, Katie Sowers, designer Christian Siriano, and many more, and all to shine a light on the many beautiful definitions of family in the LGBTQ community. In conjunction with this campaign, we also made a donation to support the work of PFLAG National, the first and largest organization for LGBTQ people, their parents, families, and allies. Now, we have a short video of our campaign that will run in just a moment. I hope you all enjoy it. It's been a really fun project for us to work on, and it's really core to who we are. And we know it's just one small step, and then there's so much more to be done to truly create a world where diversity is valued and respected, and diverse points of view are celebrated. So we're so proud to support Hispanic Executive in the launch of this issue, and then their mission of visibility. The work you guys are doing and the platform you're providing is so incredibly important. So thanks again for having me, and looking forward to hearing from all of the speakers today.
I mean, a pride is literally a family of lions.
Family, the most important thing in this world to me.
Getting married and having biological children is not the only way to make a family.
Family is love.
So many of us have to build chosen families, and so many people had to do that because they weren't accepted or loved when they came out.
My chosen family, they're the people who reflect my identity so profoundly back at me.
Family means more than just blood to me. No matter where I go in the world or in life, I can always come home to my family.
I love that. I love talking about chosen families, and we're going to talk about that a little later. But for now, I would love to start off with each of you giving me a quick intro of yourselves. Why don't we start with Carmen?
Hey guys, I'm Carmen Carrera. I am an actress, model, showgirl, activist, and CEO of CC3 Entertainment. I'm a member of the trans community, and I've been active within the LGBT community for, almost 20 years. Woo!
Okay, Armando?
Hi everyone, my name is Armando Ibañez. I am a filmmaker, editor, writer, director, and producer. I am an actor too, and I am part of the undocumented immigrant and queer communities, and I'm just excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Monica? Oh. Can't.
Pero criada aquí, raised in California, and I'm a writer, former journalist, and a mom.
Awesome. Joey?
Hi, Roman. Can you hear me first? Let's make sure.
Yes.
Great. Awesome. Hi, I'm Joey Gonzalez. I'm a Latino gay man. I'm the global CEO of Berries, which is a boutique fitness concept in 14 different countries around the world. And I am a father of 2 and a husband.
Awesome. You know, visibility, when we think of that word in our community, sometimes it is easier said than done. Sometimes it's an uphill battle. I mean, we saw some wins this week with the Emmy nominations, Pose, Stephen Canals, and especially for MJ Rodriguez. But it's not always that easy. It's not always that simple. There's a long road to get there. So wanted to see if we could start with Carmen on that note and share a little bit about your journey in becoming visible and maintaining that.
Sure. Well, for me, I grew up just watching what was current in the media and the visibility that was sort of, put out there. And the perception of trans people, was very limited to deception or some sort of clownery. And I'm speaking in reference to shows like The Maury Show or Jerry Springer. And, that's the only idea of like the trans community that I had. And, just the taboo of, loving a trans person, or being in company with a trans person, was so like big. And then just the LGBT community was just othered, and it was something to be feared or something to be mocked. And so me knowing that, I was questioning my gender, my sexuality, being a part of a Latino immigrant family, I really set out to discover what the LGBT community had to offer in real life, not what was on television. And so what I learned from my chosen family and from performing in drag and, climbing that social rank, to then being exposed on television and wanting to really carve out what it truly means to be LGBT. Like that was part of my driving force, because I wanted to prove the world wrong. Like we are not what is on TV. We are so much more than that. We have more to offer. So I think resiliency comes to mind when I think about pushing for visibility. And also, I was met with a lot of adversity within the industry because people didn't really have an idea of where a trans person could exist. So how could they offer me a job as a model or a spokesperson, or as an actress if they didn't even really understand, how we fit into society or why it's so important to be visible or why it's so important to tell our stories. So, for me, it was a lot of trying to convince people and trying to, give pieces of my personal journey and my story in order to spark that human connection. So people can understand that, no, like we have loving relationships, we have drive, we have, this need and desire to tell our story because the current narrative, wasn't true. And so that's really my journey was like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong because I know for a fact that we have so much love to offer and we have so much creativity to contribute to the arts.
I couldn't agree more, and that's a perfect segue, Armando, to elaborate on that and the need to tell our stories. Can you talk a little bit about that?
For me, I feel like because I am an undocumented immigrant and queer, I feel like I always felt some type of, I felt uncomfortable watching films, watching documentaries, reading articles about the undocumented the undocumented community, because we don't even have undocumented queer representation. So I always felt very uncomfortable. And also I realized that once I graduated from film school, I was not going to get hired by studios because of the legal status. So I decided to create my own narrative, and that's how I decided to create my own YouTube channel and web series. But my main goal with visibility is that I wanted to change the stereotypes and the narratives of portraying the undocumented immigrant as victims, and also to bring visibility to the undocumented and queer intersectionality. At the beginning, I just wanted to educate an audience about who we are. I wanted to tell them like we're not crying 24/7. We laugh, we have sex, we go to sleep, we go to dance. Like we are humans. And that was my main goal with the series. But then I started seeing that a lot of people connected through the States, a lot of undocumented queer people connected. And then I realized my main goal, which is I'm making this series for my people. I now know what it feels to be represented and to be able to watch a screen, to be able to watch a character and be able to say like that it's me. What I'm going through, it's there on the screen, and that's how I'm also finding my own voice within this industry.
Thank you for using your art for that education. I think that's something that we all can benefit from every day. There's no limit to that. Monica, can you tell us a little bit about visibility, especially in your role at GLAAD? I mean, that to me seems like a lot of weight on your shoulders to keep us visible and maintain it.
Yes, it's important. It's so important, and we all do our part here. Everybody is fabulous here on this panel, and just being out there and telling your story is incredibly important. The number one reason why people change their minds about LGBTQ people is because they know somebody who's LGBTQ. The number two reason is because they met somebody through the media. Right. So that's what GLAAD is all about, right? Visibility and true, accurate storytelling, right? That actually tells our stories instead of all the stereotypes that we saw and heard for so many years, right? Because the stereotypes taught people the wrong thing about who we are, right? And if they only see one stereotype and we're never the main character in the film and we're always there to be laughed at and blah, 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 then they don't know who we really are. So it's important for us to say, this is who I am. And so I do as much media as I can, and I train people to do media. And then we push the media to do more inclusion of Latinx and LGBTQ people. And I see it changing. I see attitudes changing, thankfully. I see media attitudes changing from not sure this is a controversial issue to it's not an issue. We're people and we're here and we're a huge part of the Latino community. So, it's super important. And I'm proud to do the work I do.
This special issue, the visibility issue, was not just LGBTQ plus; it was immigrantes, and how these stories sort of, intersected at times. And I wanted to see if we could talk a little bit about that. Joey, can you share with us your connection to immigrants and immigration, and a little bit about your background?
Sure. So both my parents immigrated. My mother from southern Italy, and my dad from Cuba through Spain. Um, and each of them, growing up, would tell their own story of what it felt like to be a part of a marginalized group. And outside of that, it was very easy for me to see growing up how differently my parents, my extended family, and I were treated because of the languages that we spoke and the foods that we ate. And I grew up in a very homogenous part of the country in the Midwest, which certainly didn't make it any easier. We really stood out. But there are so many similar parallel feelings between growing up LGBTQ in this world and being an immigrant. Feelings around being isolated, lonely, lack of visibility, being seen as an equal to the people around you, experiencing equality. Um, and I took my mom last week to see In the Heights, and she was really sort of worked up afterwards and said, I never told you this story, but when I was 14 or 15, I worked in a movie theater serving popcorn. And somebody stole money from the register, and the manager didn't even ask. I was the only immigrant. He just immediately walked up to me and said, "Get your belongings or fire." And she asked why, and he said, "Because there's money missing. We think it was you." And that's just heartbreaking to know, that your mom went through that and that so many other people experienced that. And I certainly have personally. So there are just so many parallels between any marginalized groups, right? Trying to make their way through this very challenging world. But what I think is so beautiful about that is that those lived experiences can actually drive you to not only find community, but foster it and build it. And I know that that is what has personally made me so committed to creating this very inclusive culture at Barry's.
Thank you for sharing that story. That's how we all learn. And Armando, I know that you have a lot of those stories. Like Joey said, stories that can push you to build community. Can you share just one of those stories? I know you have a lot of them, and they're all interesting, but something that still resonates with you.
Stories. I mean, I am from Acapulco, Guerrero, Mexico. I'm sure everyone has seen that beautiful city in TV, in films. But I grew up in the poor area, in the segregated area, that area that you don't see in film and in TV. And I remember that when I was a child, I remember there was uh, this film festival, this music festival with celebrities going to Acapulco. And I was so excited to go and watch these celebrities from soap operas from Mexico. So I went and I saw them and I realized that they were all white. And then I was like, wait, like they're portraying poor people in the soap operas and they don't look like me. I don't look like them. And that's when I started realizing that the film industry, the entertainment industry was only for white people. And that's when I started accepting that I wasn't beautiful somehow, that I wasn't allowed to dream big, that I wasn't allowed to have goals because living in poverty, usually the only thing that you have in mind is you need to learn how to survive every day. You're not allowed to dream. So for me, coming to the US, pursuing a better life with my family, and then telling them that I want to go to school, that I want to do something for my life, and then having my circle around telling me like the only thing that you come to the US to do is to work. If you have goals, forget about it because this is our life. Our life is just to work and survive. And I spent many years living like that, but I just couldn't accept it. I wasn't happy. And then living in the closet. So there was one time when I like saw undocumented protesters on TV and saying undocumented, unafraid. And then I joined them. Then my life changed. I saw that many undocumented immigrants were making changes, were going to school, and they have all this drive, to create social change. That completely changed my life. That's why I tell people I went to community college when I was 30, and I started making films like when I was 35. And I feel like I started living after my 30 years. Like before 30, like it's hard for me to remember uh, goals or dreams that I had. I feel like my life became magical when I became 30. And I think that talking a little bit about visibility, it's important to bring visibility to the undocumented queer community because media is telling us the opposite. It's telling us that we shouldn't be here, that we shouldn't exist, that we don't belong here. So with my goals, with every project that I get involved in, I want to tell my people we deserve everything. We deserve to be alive and we deserve to exist in this country.
I agree. I agree, Armando. Monica, before we get into intersectionality, which has been the hot thing that these past couple of years, can you share a really quick story of when you came to the U.S. and just sort of that journey?
Yeah, I came to the U.S. at the age of 6, and we moved to Buffalo, New York, and then to California. I didn't speak any English, and there was no ESL at my school, so I had another kid, Caro Carrera, taught me how to speak English. I mean, my teachers were great too, but it was tough, and it was definitely don't feel like you belong, and you feel like you're what are we doing here? We always grew up with the someday we'll go back feeling. And but it's something that Armando just said really hit home for me. The idea that we have to tell ourselves we belong here. We are. It's okay that we're here. It's awful that the narratives that we hear. It's more than okay. We're the motor of this economy. We speak many languages. We are, so much of what we are is so rich. Our culture in Mexico or wherever we come from is so rich, and the narratives are so tilted that we have such hard work to do. Same with LGBTQ people, right? And our narratives were like, it's wrong for you to marry, it's wrong for you to do this, it's wrong. So we had to counter that. It's tough. It takes so much patience and so much confidence to be like, no. I know that who we are is not only okay, it's amazing. And a huge, so anyway, I find it fascinating the similarities with immigrants and LGBTQ people and the way that we're sort of othered, and we have to say, no, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. Carmen, we heard a little bit from Armando already about intersectionality and some of the things he went through. I would love for you to share about being part of the LGBTQ plus community trans and Latina, like that intersectionality?
Sure. I think for me, honestly, my transition was a bit of a shock to my family because I transitioned outside of home. I was married. I was in a same-sex marriage, a civil union in New Jersey. And when I started my transition, I mean, I've always known, my whole life, but when I started my transition, I, did it outside my home. So when I came back home, my family, there was like an awkwardness, because a lot of the topics of my transition were never brought up. And so I think it was about reconnecting to family because the outside world was not such a safe place. It's still not such a safe place for trans women, especially trans women of color. Just for me to be able to feel safe and feel reconnected, I kind of like went back in and did a lot of the groundwork to reconnect to my mom, to my uncles, to my cousins, to my grandmother, the old school way of thinking. I just had to like deal with it, but also hold my family accountable and say, hey, well, you're my family and I need you and you need to be there for me. And so I think that's really what inspired a lot of the LGBT community who to this day like will write to me and say, hey, I'm going through this with my parents, or I'm going through this because culturally being LGBTQ is not the most accepted thing. It's not the most ideal, I guess future you'd want for your child for whatever reason that is, but that kind of exists within the community. And so it's like, I'm always trying to think of innovative ways to like reconnect to your family because, I think family is the most important thing. It's probably because that's how I was raised. And so I want to keep that love and that connection alive, and also like within the community, it's like surviving out in the outside world, how we can come up with things to empower ourselves so that we can put on a brave face and confront the world, ignorance, adversity, discrimination, and be there for one another. And that's why it's so important to have chosen family as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going with this next one. So, Joey, I'm going to give you the last question here. Visible is our sponsor and did a campaign about chosen families. Talk to me about the importance of chosen families and how you incorporate that in your everyday life.
Yeah, so I'll start by saying I'm lucky enough to have had my sort of immediate nuclear family and extended family always be very supportive and demonstrate unconditional love, which I know is unique in this universe. So super grateful for that always. But chosen family plays a different role, at least for me. The members of my chosen family don't just love me unconditionally and empathize with the things I've been through. Most of them have been through them too. And when you've had similar lived experiences, there's a connection and a bond that I don't think, the strength of that can't exist without those shared experiences, at least for me. So my chosen family, are a huge part of my life. They help, even at this young age, my children understand sort of who we are, our identity as a family. And they just enrich my life so much.
All right. I love all of this. We are ready for the Q&A session of today's discussion. So I think I just have to click over on the Q&A part. That's right. Okay, good. I'm doing this right. Okay. The struggle for real diverse representation is still so difficult, and we still have a long way to go. What keeps you motivated every day, especially through the tougher moments? What keeps you motivated, Armando?
My drive for change, my drive for humanity, but also, people usually ask me if I'm not afraid to write about these things that I write. I always write as if I'm going to die in 2 weeks. So what keeps me motivated is to know that I might die any day. And that, like we say in Spanish, like, no tenemos los días asegurados. So that's what keeps me motivated. So every time I'm afraid, I'm just like, fuck it, I'm just going to write.
I love it. What about, before I go into the next question, Monica, can you also answer that? Like, especially in your role for GLAAD, such an amazing role.
Yeah. I mean, what keeps me motivated is just the privilege of being able to do this work, of having family acceptance and, not knowing that it's my job to do it. So I'm not going to get fired for doing it. So I can be open. And I know that so many other people can't be, right? So I just get excited thinking that there's a kid somewhere who doesn't have acceptance at school or at home, anywhere, but they watch TV and they see someone talking about being happy Latina lesbian with kids and a family, and they go, oh, maybe someday I can have that too, right? So I just think whatever my nervousness might be around doing something or my whatever, it's like that there's a kid out there who has nobody. So you better get on there and talk about being who you are.
I love that, especially as
May I
I
add
was.
something to that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I want to just say, for me, like, just the potentiality of, like, what is possible for a trans person, a public and open trans person, I think is what really fuels me on the days that I feel, heavy or whatever it is that I'm going through. It's like, no, like, anything is possible, especially in this day and age. We do have so much support and we do have visibility, and it is changing. And it's like, there's only up from here, and whatever I do, I know it's gonna inspire someone out there, whether they're LGBTQ or not, whether it's about fitness and nutrition and wellness, or if it's about standing up for you, for what you believe in and who you are, or if it's, just to go through the transition with bravery. I think just anything that I do in any realm, where I'm working, it's like there's unlimited potential, because it's sort of like a new thing to, like, be open and visible and trans. It's like, what? So yeah, that sort of always re-inspires me.
Absolutely. And I think that, you're serving as a big role model for a lot of young transgender people, and people in our community overall. Talking about that and mentors and superheroes that, we have looked up to in real life. Joey, who would you say that has served as sort of that mentor for you, that LGBTQ warrior?
Oh man, I mean, I have so many. I would say one of my mentors has been a friend who's just enjoyed a lot of success against all odds in an industry that's been generally and historically not kind to people in the LGBTQ community. And he's someone that I've known for over 20 years, is about 20 years older than me, and has really helped sort of counsel me through the last couple of decades of my career.
I love that.
And can I just add one thought to the last question?
Sure.
Which is like, what keeps you going? And this is, I think, something that, like, in the hardest of times for me, I always come back to. I actually do believe that people are good. And when I look back retroactively at, like, what we've done as a world, like, we've just come a really long way. And it feels like it's consistently always for the best. It feels like directionally we're headed in the right place. And I think that's because people are good. And I believe that.
That's a really good segue into the next question, which, Armando, what would be your hope or advice to the LGBTQ plus communities, the immigrantes communities, especially after such a tough year and a half that I think we've all had? What would be your one wish or one piece of advice?
Well, the year and a half plus the other 4 years that I don't want to be specific about in politics, but I think that I always tell my people, if you know what I mean, I always tell my people to not give up, to not give up, especially the undocumented community. Like, we are often told every day through mainstream media that we shouldn't be here, that we shouldn't exist, that we have no rights. Pursuing a better life shouldn't be punished. So for me, my hopes is that one day, I remember one day I was asked if I accomplished the American dream just because when you get a grant or when you I feel like for me, the American dream is when the undocumented queer community is finally recognized as human beings. That's when I know that we have accomplished the American dream. And many more underrepresented communities. So my hopes is that one day we are recognized by this country as human beings.
Thank you, Armando. Monica, there's an interesting question here. Besides GLAAD, what organizations do you think that are actually doing the good work? I know GLAAD, and I know your role at GLAAD has been, especially in media, obviously has been fighting the fight for a long time, and I love that. But who else besides GLAAD have you seen kind of doing that hard work for our communities?
I think United We Dream does really great work. Voto Latino does great work. Unidos does great work. El Instituto Latinx de Fuerza Equals. Ay, no me acuerdo el número. I'm not remembering the name exactly. But the Latino Institute, which is part of Creating Change. The Latinx Institute, which is part of Creating Change. Trans Latina Coalition does an amazing job. So many my friends do beautiful work and in their communities too, and in Miami and Adriana's place in Florida and Andrea in Texas, and so many amazing people who are doing great work. Yeah, and I admire them very much.
Thank you. Good shout out to Trans Latina Coalition. We love Bambi Salcedo, and she was part of this issue, and so I love that you mentioned that organization. And I see the clock is ticking. So really quickly, Carmen, can you give me an example of when an ally was there for you, supported you?
Let's see. I mean, GLAAD has always been there for me. That's huge, huge. Anytime, especially in the beginning of my, I guess, my visible journey, like just being out and being in public eye. There was an issue with me filming with a TV show that had sort of changed what was really happening. Like, like it just changed the whole perspective of what the purpose of the show was. And, GLAAD really stepped up and was there for me and had my back, especially just with bringing up the topic and then educating the public, because, this was a period of time where people were used to sort of sharing and like living in the ignorance, of being oppressive to trans people. So that was like really major. GLAAD's always been there for me. But also too, there's been moments where I'm just in public with my girlfriends and, maybe we're at a bar or at a club, and there's been so many moments where people would just sort of like have the weirdest and most invasive questions, especially about genitalia and surgery and things like this. And, it felt good to have like another woman there to be like, hey, that's not cool. Or like, a cis person, heterosexual cis person, to speak up and have my back and say that's not cool. It's moments like those where I'm like, wow, like I think we've really made a big difference, where it's like something can be going down and I don't have to be the only person standing up for myself. There's other people that are outside of the community that will like correct the problem, so it's nice.
Yeah. This has been an amazing discussion. I thank all of you. And, when I listen to everything, I can't help but, think again, we have so many stories. We have so many stories to tell, all of you and everybody in our community. And we need our allies more than ever. We need corporate sponsors to help us tell those stories, to do that buy-in. We need studios and networks and streaming platforms to tell those stories, to help us tell those stories in a big way. And, as exemplified here in the past, 30 minutes, one thing I feel like I've said for the past 10 years, and it definitely was exemplified here, was that, Latinos, Latinx, Hispanic, whatever you want to call it, LGBTQ+, we don't follow the trends, we set them. And so I would love to see more of those in our stories and in the media, and looking forward to all of that, from you four. And thank you again for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the visibility issue.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.